I raised my head from the drink in hand. The bane rocked as I felt the waves stand. A crashing fear ran over me as I turned to our mate of misery. What waits for us at port? What grand spectacle of the court? For what crime shall we be thrown in the pits of darkness down below? The mate at first did not reply before his calloused hands reached the sky. 10 cents per barrel of tea was a tax just a bit too steep for we. So now, son, we ride the waves, take them far as the charts will brave. For those who we once called friend would now wish to hang us in their stead. Hey! I shook my head from side to side. My family had crossed my mind. The mate left it off as he watched my eye and rose to the table proud and high. Oh yes, a price was paid for those we loved and the place we made. But what cost would you not see to keep your scraps of liberty? By now a few weeks had passed us by before the colors of the king had been spied across the edge of the water plain, closely gaining on the bane. Oh yes, a price was paid, those we loved and the place we made. But what cost would you not see to keep your scraps of liberty? The fight was brutal, deck to deck. Many of our brothers the waves had kept. As the bane limped away, we watched as our country sank today. Oh yes, a price was paid, those we loved and a place we made. But what cost would you not see to keep your scraps of liberty?
Greetings, everybody. How you doing? Let's get into it. Here we go. We're testing a lot of new stuff here today, and we're going to be watching and commenting on Mark Passios' latest work, The Science of Natural Law. He has a plan, she has a plan, and you get to pay for it regardless.
The best way to get someone motivated is to stand for something strongly, deeply, passionately.
Subscribe to Disenthrall.
Do as you're told.
If one thing is for sure, the music is awesome around here. Okay, so a few things have changed. I'm not sure how much you can tell has changed, but got a little bit better camera rig, maybe. The camera is higher than it was before. I couldn't get it any lower. I hope it doesn't look like I'm like staring up at you guys. So this is kind of a tech test as well as just kind of a nice evening chill session. And also we're going to get into some philosophy, hopefully, as we review Mark Passios' latest movie. So I will be hanging out in chat. I welcome your commentary, your questions, your thoughts, your rebuttals if you think I've got something wrong. And yeah, let's get into it, guys. Let's see here. So forgive me, things are a little bit moved around differently, but we're just going to pop myself down to the side. This is about an hour and 8 minutes long. I know a lot of my viewers have been looking to get some commentary out of me on Mark Passios' work. I have not had the opportunity yet to sit down with him for any kind of straightforward discussion. And the other bit of work that he had released was 8 hours long. So a video has yet to materialize where we actually go through that thing. So I'm hoping, I'm really, really hoping that this hour and 8 minutes will give us his take on his philosophy that he calls, you know, objective natural law. I'm hoping that he does it in an hour and 8 minutes, because then we can actually hopefully talk through it and figure out if I'm wrong about his conception of natural law. I'm looking forward to learning something, to be honest. Good to see you, AnCap Gamer. What's up, New Edge? Outlaw Barber says objective natural law is as real as it gets. What if as real as it gets is not real?
You understand me?
Oh no, I can't watch this this cop's brutality very much these days. It just gets me a little riled up. All right. All right. Okay. Yeah, I probably will have to remove this video from YouTube. I'll upload it to Odysee. So if you're watching right now, just expect that at the end of the live stream, this will disappear from YouTube. Oh, at least they're properly distanced. Oh yeah, it'll have to come off Facebook too. Thanks, Adam. I forgot we're on Facebook. What's up? Long time no see anybody on Facebook. What's up, James? Good to see you. Okay, let's get to some content. Remember the China protests? Man, that seems like forever ago now. I remember being excited for them fighting for their freedom. What even happened to that? It like passed out of the news cycle and we just don't even know. We don't even...
Is humanity
what happened?
Truly free? Are there universal laws in effect that apply to human behavior?
Okay, here we go. Before I get started and dig into this, because I have a feeling I'm going to disagree, and I have a feeling that I'm going to be able to properly articulate to you the holes in his logic. I want to make sure that everyone knows, especially Mark if he ever watches this, that this is done out of respect and from a place of constructive criticism so that we can hopefully improve our ideas in this space and move forward better and stronger and more rational as possible. And I know that's a value that you hold, Mark. So just know that any commentary or disagreement that comes from me is from a good place. So with that, I just wanted to say, oh, also, kudos to you for producing this. I started the process of trying to write my thoughts down on rights into a book about a year ago, and have failed thus far to produce an end product. So I am impressed that you have done so. If nothing else, you're definitely kicking my ass in this department. Well done. All right.
Does our knowledge or ignorance of these laws impact our collective freedom as a species? This documentary will explore these questions and our current understanding of universal forces that affect the daily lives of each and every one of us.
What's up, Liberty?
I'm an independent researcher and public speaker from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
This is the first time I've seen this.
I lecture on the
This is a raw
topics of
watch. I
human
haven't seen this before,
consciousness,
so.
morality, freedom, occultism, symbology, and spirituality.
Yeah, not sure about collective freedom. You're right.
Many years of unique life experiences have afforded me an extraordinary perspective on the current human condition. Through my website, whatonearthishappening.com, I continue to explore these topics with a worldwide audience.
And it bears mentioning, you guys can all go and pay for this, so
I grew up
if you
with a
find his
traditional
content helpful,
Roman Catholic
head to that
family
website you just saw and you can
background
buy
in
yourself a
South
copy of this.
During my grade school years, I began questioning the beliefs and motives of
The
organized
camera's up
religion,
so high now. I feel like I'm looking up into
recognizing
the
it
sky.
as a system designed to control
Not sure I like it.
human thought and understanding. My unanswered philosophical and sociological questions
Look at that brooding face. That's awesome. Oh man.
eventually turned to discontent and anger. This drove me to seek out what I considered at the time to be the polar opposite of religion. My subsequent life path led me into membership and influence of what I now refer to as the dark occult. What most people might call nefarious secret societies. But what actually is the occult? The occult. What does the word occult mean?
I like the music. This is neat.
Occult? It means maybe supernatural or, yeah.
Occult. Mystic, unknown, kind of stigmatized.
It's funny, I think by society it generally has a negative connotation. I'm not sure I could actually define it.
I think it's like palmistry, voodoo, like spirits, things like that. Ouija boards, maybe.
I guess anything that is a Christian would be considered a cult.
Spiritual. Like something with a strong following, right?
I don't know, honestly.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I admire people that
The
just
word
say they don't
occult
know.
simply means hidden. The occult.
So he says the word occult simply means hidden. The definition I see on Wikipedia, Comicpedia, is the occult in the broadest sense is a category of supernatural beliefs and practices which generally fall outside the scope of religion and science, encompassing such phenomena involving otherworldly agency as mysticism, spirituality, and magic. It can also refer to supernatural ideas like extrasensory perception and parapsychology.
Refers to hidden knowledge. Knowledge that is not commonly known by the vast majority of human beings. Occultism is a body of knowledge.
That might be a definition, but I heard that version of the word first from Mark himself a couple years back. Like, I think the common knowledge is much more in line with what I just read you from Wikipedia. But I think one of the things I've noticed with Mark's work is that he is very involved in defining language and using the definitions of language to put together arguments, which we can get into. Hopefully, I'm hoping he makes his arguments here. This will be awesome.
Which encompasses the study of hidden laws of nature. Laws which cannot readily be seen with our eyes or measured by traditional scientific instrumentation. I became aware that the groups of occultists with whom I became involved were comprised of an eclectic array of people from every walk of life and every social institution, including politics, banking, media, law, military, law enforcement, entertainment, technology, medicine, and education. Among their ranks were many people of great influence and power, all working together toward one common goal: to increase their own collective power at the expense of everyone else's rights and freedom. These dark occultists are able to do this because they have access to hidden knowledge to which the overwhelming majority of humanity still remains ignorant. These occult manipulators are actually master psychologists who utilize their deep and ancient knowledge of the human psyche and the hidden laws of nature to deceive and manipulate the masses of humanity into total subservience to their will.
Hidden laws of nature. I'm taking notes.
This allows the occult manipulators to easily convert their knowledge differential into a power differential in our world. After a profound crisis in conscience, I eventually made the free will decision to cease my involvement in the world of dark occultism. I now teach people the very information which these dark occult orders have been keeping to themselves in order to stay in power behind the scenes. The ultimate hidden knowledge which they have been holding back from humanity's awareness is called natural law, and it is the secret of all so-called secret societies throughout human history.
Okay. So far, loving the music. This is great. This is good stuff. I'm a fan of the music. Paolo says, in Italian, the word occult is exactly what he says. The definition is to hide. Well, that's interesting.
Natural law. What is natural law?
Natural law, I guess you could say just what, almost like first instinct kind of, you know what I mean? Like what would come simply just by the way that we are.
I'm not really sure. I'm actually a lawyer by training and education, so I'm probably the worst person to ask.
Law applies to the whole country.
I think it means like how law is interpreted by people on like a day-to-day basis.
Natural law, everyone is nice. Everyone was born nice and kind, but they are corrupted by society.
The term natural law, I mean, if you break it down in, I guess in regular terms, it'll mean, damn, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know what natural law means.
To understand what natural law is, we must first know what it most certainly is not.
Uh-oh.
Natural law is definitely not, and has absolutely nothing to do with Darwin's theories on evolution, the Darwinian survival of the fittest, the so-called law of the jungle, or the so-called natural order of nature as a dog-eat-dog world. So, what actually is natural law? The definition of the word natural is inherent to and having a basis in reality and nature. In other words, not man-made. The definition of the word law is an existing condition that is both binding and immutable. Binding means having an effect that cannot be escaped. Immutable means unable to be changed by anything or anyone. Natural law, therefore, is a set of universal, non-man-made, binding and unchangeable conditions which govern the behavioral consequence of beings with the capacity for holistic intelligence.
Hold on, I gotta back it up 1 second. All right, so this is not the traditional natural law as understood by philosophers. It's not. It's just not. It's close, but that definition is very carefully crafted to be different in some ways I'm sure we're about to come across. natural law is sort of determining what rights there should be based upon observing the state of humanity. It's like deducing from human behavior what rights are and sort of assuming that all people have inherent rights conferred not by a constitution or by law, but by, you know, the big three: God, reason, or nature. It's sort of like assuming the source of rights to be just built in, just inherent. They either come from God because he created them in the universe, they come from your humanity. Why? Don't worry about that. Or they come from reason, which doesn't really make any sense either. But that's fine. That's more of a nominal natural rights discussion. If he's going to talk about a different natural law thing that he's going to talk about, that's fine. We can indulge him in that, and we can go down that path with him. I just wanted to point out that he's very careful with his words, and I recognize that because when I do my work in rights, I have to be very, very precise with my language as well, and you can kind of tell it when you see it, especially if you've worked on it yourself. So let's examine his natural law, a set of universal, meaning it applies to everyone, everywhere, all times and places; non-man-made, meaning they're outside of the mind. They exist outside of people. They weren't invented by people or applied by people. Binding and unchangeable, meaning you cannot know that they exist and they would still affect you, which govern the behavioral consequence of beings. Hold on, we got kind of sideways here. Capacity for, I gotta get out the way. Govern the behavioral consequence of beings with the capacity for holistic intelligence. That is an interesting way to end that. He clearly is trying to build some conclusions into the definition there with that. Which govern the behavioral consequence of beings with the capacity for holistic intelligence. I'm sure that's going to come back up later.
Set of universal, non-man-made, binding and unchangeable conditions which govern the behavioral consequence of beings with the capacity for holistic intelligence. Natural law governs the aggregate or collective, free will behavioral choices of entire populations by manifesting the consequences of the behaviors that we choose. The consequences which we receive are always dependent upon whether our chosen behaviors are either moral or immoral, or in other words, right or wrong. While we all have free will to choose which behaviors we will conduct, we are the aggregate or collective, free will behavioral choices of entire populations by manifesting the consequences of the behaviors that we choose. The consequence.
So he's talking about natural law as if it's an actual actor that can do things in the world, and it manifests the consequences of our decisions. And then he refers to free will as if it exists, which I have not seen evidence that it does, and it doesn't really fit the understanding that we have of the world around us being very deterministic. So there's definitely a point of disagreement on the free will issue, but I think we can proceed anyway.
Which we receive are always dependent upon whether our chosen behaviors are either moral or immoral, or in other words, right or wrong.
So this natural law thing manifests consequences of our decisions based upon whether they're good or evil, right or wrong. Okay, well, hopefully he's going to provide evidence of this thing that exists that does this.
While we all have free will to choose which behaviors we will conduct, we are not insulated from the moral consequences of our behavioral choices.
You have to prove the claim about free will.
Natural law is a body of laws that operate within the unseen or non-physical realm, so they may be considered to be occulted or hidden laws of nature. These laws are built into the fabric of reality, just like gravity and electromagnetism.
Okay. Stop. This is confusing me. So he says that they're occulted or hidden from view, but then he says they're woven into the fabric of reality, like gravity. Well, we can detect gravity. Gravity is not unseen. It's not occulted, to use his language. If this natural law is like gravity, then we should be able to whip out a gravimeter? How do you detect gravity? What's the name of the meter? Somebody out there will know. You should be able to whip out a detector and detect this natural law stuff.
However, since these governing dynamics operate in the non-physical realm, human beings must incorporate a much wider worldview in order to recognize and accept the existence and operation of these laws.
So we have to adopt a worldview that allows for believing in the existence of undetectable things. This sounds wildly irrational. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. I have standards of evidence that I require for things that I believe. I don't choose to adopt a worldview with lower standards of evidence of what I believe. I need evidence.
The understanding of natural law is absolutely not a belief system or a religion. The workings of natural law can be discovered and understood through its observable, measurable, and repeatable effects in our world.
Okay, now we're talking. Then it's not occulted if it's detectable.
Actually constitutes a science of morality, which requires no belief or faith. Belief or
We're bouncing back and forth between something undetectable that doesn't exist in the physical realm and something that he just said can be detected, testable, and repeatable. It seems like we're back and forth. We're Mott and Bailey is what it kind of feels like we're doing. For those of you familiar with Mott and Bailey, you can look at, or not familiar with it, you can go look up a video I did on this channel about the Mott and Bailey equivocation fallacy. I won't go into it here. Somebody in comments says, gravity has no evidence, it's a theory. You can absolutely detect gravity, and you can detect changes in gravity, and they've already done it, and they're doing it right now. There's multiple gravity detectors on the planet that can detect gravitational waves coming in from things like binary stars rotating and things like that. It's absolutely detectable.
Belief in these laws is completely irrelevant, as they exist as surely as any physical law, such.
And somebody else said that he's basically talking about karma. No. Karma is understood as, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody could understand it differently than this, but my understanding of karma is it's just basically the interpersonal effects of your actions. Meaning, if I'm an asshole to somebody, it's likely that they're going to be less friendly with me next time I meet them. And if I'm an asshole to a lot of people over a long period of time, a lot of people are going to, on average, over time, be less friendly or less helpful towards me. That's not magic. That's not natural law. That's just interpersonal species relations. That's just the reaction that people have when you're an asshole to them. That's more karma. And, you know, they use spiritual language to make it seem more spooky than it is. Like, the vibes you put out there are the vibes you're going to get back. Okay, well, all we're really talking about is interpersonal relations. And that's not what he's using, specific scientific language to try and sort of pull it out of that wishy-washy subjective world and put it into an objective classification, which is not karma.
As gravity, which we take for granted in daily life. Natural law is also known as moral law, cosmic law, universal law, spiritual law, the law of cause and effect, consequentialism, the golden rule, karma, and many other names. Why is understanding natural law...
We're all over the place. Dude, the words that he just said all have so many nuances, and he's calling it all the same thing. So I'm a little lost as to his definition, so I'm going to withhold further comment and listen and hopefully learn.
So important. The understanding of natural law is critically important to human beings who seek to live in freedom and peace together. Since natural law delivers the consequences of an entire society's behavioral choices based on whether their behavior is moral or not, it is of fundamental importance for human beings to know with certainty what the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior actually is. Human rights. Do human beings have inherent rights?
No.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah, they do.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think every human has a right.
Human beings always should have rights, no matter where you're from, no matter your religion, your sex, no matter whatever. They should always have rights.
What is the definition of a human right?
A human right is something that, by the fact that we exist as individuals, we're entitled to just by the nature of being.
Something that a human being would need in order to thrive.
Something provided to a human just for existing.
Something that everyone deserves, like just being born and being alive.
The right to have like shelter and food and water.
What was that? Hold on.
Something provided to a human just for existing.
Let's just take a moment. Let's just take a moment. Let's just. Okay.
Something that everyone deserves, like just being born and being alive.
The right to have like shelter and food and water and like basic necessities.
You know, I want to go with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, essentially. But food, shelter, and basic needs, I think, are human rights.
Human right, I think it's, I don't know, I guess something allowed to a human, I guess.
Every human being deserves something, and that would be a right. And an example of a human right would be safety.
A right is an action that does not initiate harm to another sentient being. Most human beings cannot correctly provide that simple definition when asked. This is the primary reason.
That's because that's his definition that he made up, not the definition of a right action. That is his definition of a right action. It's also not an objective definition of a right action. There's nothing special in the universe about initiating harm on other sentient beings that makes it right or wrong. But again, maybe I'm misunderstanding. I want to make sure that I don't comment too early on in the video. I'm hoping that he provides more explanations as we go on.
Create harm to another sentient being.
Human rights are, again, according to normal definitions, human rights are moral principles or norms for certain standards of human behavior and are regularly protected in municipal and international law. They're commonly understood as inalienable fundamental rights to which a person is inherently entitled simply because he or she is a human being, and which are inherent in all human beings.
Most human beings cannot correctly provide that simple definition when asked.
Here is the best definition that I have heard for what rights are. And by what I have, and this is what I've worked on. This is my work. This is my best definition of what rights are. Rights are mutual, reciprocal understandings, but between, and that should be afforded to, all beings who are or will become apperceptive to both advanced conceptualization and gratification deferral, and should exclude those who do not continue to reciprocate them. Rights are nothing more than mutual reciprocal understandings between people. I will not punch you if you will not punch me. Now we each have created a right between us called no punching. We have a right to not be punched. That's what rights are. That's all they are. They're a mutual reciprocal understanding between people, and all the fancy words, again, are just meant to say that rights are mutual reciprocal understandings between beings that are advanced enough mentally to be able to reciprocate them. If you can't understand what a right is and what property is, and if you can't understand these concepts, you can't reciprocate them. So you can't participate in the mutual reciprocal relationship with other people. That's what rights are. Rights don't exist at somewhere outside in the universe. They're not woven into the fabric of reality. They're not woo. They're not spooky. They're people working together peacefully, agreeing to not harm each other in exchange for like consideration. That's what rights are. That is the most bare metal, simple definition of what rights are that I have yet been able to find or come up with. You can read more about that. I have a draft stub unfinished article you can read on disenthralled.me/rights if you want to hear more about that.
This is the primary reason that human beings are losing their rights and freedom. How can we possibly keep what we cannot even properly define? A right must be defined in the negative. This means that we can arrive at an understanding of the infinite amount of rights we have by knowing the very small amount of actions that are not rights, actions which are wrongdoings.
Yeah, some people are, let's not, we don't need to call Mark names. He has done a ton of great work, and he's given a lot of great talks on a lot of great subjects. And I'm not commenting on any of those because I don't disagree with them. So what we do in philosophy is I'm not going to make videos where we watch Mark's content and be like, yep, I agree with that. Yep, I agree with that too. No, we're going to move, hopefully, philosophy forward by looking at the stuff that we might disagree on so that we can refine the edge of our understanding. That's what we're doing here today. And we're doing it out of respect for somebody that's put in the time and effort to create in this area, which most people never do. So just to be clear, like, I appreciate that Mark is one of the rare humans that wants to work on this stuff. That's awesome. We don't have to agree. It's out of respect that I rebut or critique or want to engage in a dialogue around his work. Work that I haven't even been able to rise to the level of creating myself for you guys yet, except in video form. Like, I feel like it needs to be in more formal form, and I haven't done that yet. So, you know, kudos to him.
Behaviors which do initiate harm to other sentient beings. This list of harmful behaviors includes murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and willfully lying. If we analyze each of the wrongdoings in turn, we can find that they are all variations of theft in one form or another. Murder is the theft of life which is not rightfully ours to take. Assault is the theft of another's well-being without right. Rape is
this
the
usage of theft
free will sexual association.
is a little bit
Theft
reductionist,
is the stealing
but
of property.
it's fine.
Trespass is the theft of the security of one's living domain.
Except when he... so you got to be careful when using theft in this way, because you can only steal things that are valid forms of property, and some of the things he's kind of talking around are not valid forms of property. Like, you can't steal time. Time is not a valid form of property. You can take up space on someone's property, and that would be considered, you know, theft of that. It's trespassing. You know, you're stealing the use of use of property isn't property. So even I'm doing it wrong. You know, taking up space or blocking the usage of somebody's property is kind of like theft of that little section of property for the time you're using it. So that's fine. We just got to be real careful with our language, guys. If you're a subscriber to this channel, you're used to this, right? You're used to, like, the pedantic nitpicking of language because it's so important for these topics. So I'm not going to apologize. That's what you're here for, I hope.
Is the theft of free will choice via violence or duress.
That was a perfect example. I shouldn't have paused it yet. A choice is not property. It cannot be stolen.
And willfully lying is the theft of necessary information, which negatively impacts someone else's ability to engage in informed decision-making.
I'm not sure what benefit he's going to get out of calling everything a form of theft. It seems unnecessary, but that's fine. Not a big deal.
These immoral behaviors constitute the very definition of violence.
Okay, he is applying a judgment to the behaviors called immoral that he has not justified. He's several times throughout the 20 minutes of the video that we've been in so far called behaviors evil or wrong, and he hasn't justified that yet. So one person killing another, the act that is happening is one person killing another. Calling that act immoral or wrong requires applying a moral judgment to that act. So calling it wrong is a moral judgment that a human that can understand morality has the capacity to apply a judgment to an interaction between people or an action between people. A human has to apply that label, that judgment, onto that action or that interaction. And I think he's going to make the case that there is an objective, woven into the fabric of reality, way to extract that moral judgment from the fabric of reality rather than it just being an interpretation that a human places on an interaction that they see. So let's continue.
Violence is the initiation of harmful behavior against other sentient beings. The list of harmful behaviors just explained are transgressions against natural law because they are violations of the inherent.
I can't. I'm a little tired. I'm a little raw about seeing cops beat people right now, so I'm going to look over here for a while.
To violate the inherent rights of other beings through theft is actually what is meant to conduct violence. Since all wrongdoings are forms of theft, the natural law of moral conduct can ultimately be summed up in 2 words: don't steal.
This seems like an unnecessary reduction. Also, I'm still missing the foundation
the
for
non-aggression principle and the self-defense principle.
for the judgment of immoral or
The
wrong.
non-aggression principle is one of the main principles of natural law. This principle means that it is morally wrong to initiate aggression or violence upon other sentient beings.
Okay, I'm sorry. This video is going to be 2 hours long, but it is what it is. This is hopefully what you're here for. So, the non-aggression principle is an equation. Think of it like a math equation with variables and an equal sign. And on the left side of the equal sign, you have the equation. You have the variables that you plug in. The variables are the people involved and the interaction involved and the property involved and what happened to all of those things together. On the other side of the equal sign, you have the moral judgment. The non-aggression principle simplified, like the NAP that most people talk about is like a simplified bumper sticker version of what it actually is, but suffice it to say, it's an equation. You plug in the values of the variables, and on the outside pops a moral judgment, good or evil, right or wrong, allowable or not allowable. Was this an initiation of force, yes or no? True or false? That's what pops out on the equal sign. Was this an initiation of force? Was this action or interaction between people consensual or non-consensual? Boom. Outside, on the other side of the equal sign, you get a yes or no. Yes, that was consensual. It was not an initiation of force. Or no, that was not consensual. It was an initiation of force. That's what you get out of the NAP. You don't get the moral judgment out of the NAP. We have to apply that ourselves. We have to choose to hold the NAP as our moral framework, for example, and then decide that when the equation pops out, yes, that was an initiation of force outside the equal sign, we have to then apply the moral judgment of, oh, okay, so that interaction was immoral or was evil or was wrong. It's not That's all it is. It's an equation for evaluating human interaction, and we have to choose what to do with it. Obviously, most people out in the world don't even know it exists and don't necessarily use that as their moral equation for determining what actions and interactions between people should and shouldn't be. And we're obviously trying to convince them to unplug, the Constitution and their indoctrination from public schools. We're trying to get them to unplug all of that and stop using those equations that are subjective and based on power and involuntary authority. Think about all the equations people have used over the history of the species, right? They've used, it started with God, the church. Those were the ultimate moral authority. Those were the moral equation. They would plug an interaction between people into the equation of whatever the church said was good or evil, and out would pop, usually just out of the subjective opinion of whatever priest was in control at the time, they'd pop out a good or evil evaluation, and then people that cared about using that equation would then take that result from that equation, and then they would act on it in the real world. And so it went from, God to churches to God kings to parliaments. Now we have Congress and constitutions and legal magic spells. This is the current sort of milieu of moral equations that people are using. None of it is objective. It is all subjective. Then we look at the non-aggression principle, for example, and we have an objective equation. Not objective in terms of like what Mark is pushing for, something that exists as part of reality, but we have an equation that is, and more on this on disenthrall.me/rights, we have an equation that is not subjective. It works the same way every time. It is deterministic. If you plug in the same people, the same variables, the same circumstances, the same property, the same actions into the equation, you will every time, in all times and places, between all people, wherever, you're going to get the same true or false. Was that initiation of force or was it not? That's the type of objective that I think is all we got. That's the only objective that there is something that is non-subjective, something that can be universalized, meaning work in all time, all times and places between all people. That's necessary, but not sufficient. But it also needs to be objective, meaning non-subjective, meaning it works the same way every time, and it doesn't include anything subjective, meaning opinions, feelings, subjective to what time of day it happened, or what location in the planet it happened, or subjective as to like, oh, it works this way for that person, but that guy's got a fucking badge, so it works differently for him. That's subjective. That's arbitrary garbage. When I say objective, and the objective morality that I talk about, which is not objective morality as most philosophers would use the term objective morality, it's not, but it's like a non-subjective morality is the best way to say it. Okay, so I just went on a rant. Let's get back to the whole point of this video. I just wanted to juxtapose my definition of rights, the non-aggression principle that he just brought up, what these things actually are and how they actually function as concepts, not as things that tangibly exist. And I'm going to try and catch up on comments. I know you guys are talking a lot, and I'm enjoying reading your comments as we go.
This brings us to another important principle of natural law, the self-defense principle. Individuals always reserve the natural right to use physical force to defend themselves against acts of violence conducted upon them. Self-defense is not and should never be.
It's really difficult to focus on the logic and the philosophy of what he's saying when I'm watching people be murdered in front of me. Why is he doing this? Like, I need to not watch this video. Not murdered. That was defense. Excuse me. I know. I'm familiar with the story. I know it was self-defense. I know the guy deserved, what he got. It's really hard to bifurcate my brain, watch a guy get shot to death, and stay focused on the words that he's saying. Let me...
considered to be violence. Self-defense against violence is an inherent right of all sentient beings.
He's using the word sentient, which I disagree with, and I don't disagree with his use of the word sentient with rights lightly. It's something that I used myself for 4-5 years when I was working on my conception of rights. I disagree with it for a very specific reason, but I don't think that discussion belongs here, so let's keep going.
Do human beings have the right to defend themselves against aggression?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. If the aggression
I need to do man on the street stuff, guys. This is fun.
is physical,
I need to do
obviously,
this.
yes.
If physical force is acted on them first.
I just want the soundtrack to this.
Equality under natural law.
This is some super chill coding music. I want the soundtrack.
Does everyone have the same rights? Or do some people have more rights than others?
I think people should have rights that are equal to everybody else.
I think in a perfect world, everyone would have the same rights, but as the world is right now, people don't all have the same rights.
Not everyone has the same rights.
Some people have different rights, some money, privilege, class, things like that.
In reality, some people have way more rights than other people.
There's definitely some rights that some people possess and others don't.
Most people would agree with the fact that the behaviors which initiate harm to others are immoral actions. The problem arrives when we fail to hold everyone to the same account regarding the morality of their actions.
Gonna look over here for a while.
We must understand that everyone has the same rights as everyone else, and there are no exceptions to this law. If no individual possesses the right to perform a certain action because it initiates harm to another, then no one can delegate such a non-existent right to any other.
Here is the problem with the language he's using, and let me make sure I heard it right before I critique it.
Action, and that everyone has the same rights as everyone else, and there are no exceptions to this law. If no individual possesses the right to perform a certain action because it initiates harm to another, then no one can delegate such a non-existent right to any other individual or any other group.
This is the most common problem with any discussion of rights, and I would encourage all of you, take this as advice from somebody that has spent more time thinking about rights over the past 5 years than most other humans. Stop using possessive language about rights. Stop reifying, that's the word, reifying the concept of rights into something that exists, something that you can possess, something that you can own or have or protect or hold or keep or lose. All of these words do not apply to concepts. They apply to tangible property. I can lose my phone. I can have my phone taken from me. I can protect my phone. I can defend my phone. You can't do any of those things with rights. And also, I think it's a subtle psychological trick that maybe the governments and people in power have used over time to their advantage, maybe even subconsciously. When you talk about rights as if they exist, people by default, without thinking about it, think of rights as if they exist tangibly, like a shield. So if you have a right to not have things stolen from, or to use Passios' language, no theft, right? No one has the right to steal from you. You have the right to be secure in your property. Then I think in most people's minds, subconsciously, they don't worry about protecting their self and their property as much because they have rights. We have rights. I have rights. My rights are inviolate. They're natural rights. They're natural law. My rights are based in natural law. They're given to me by God. Notice all these possessive property words that we're using when we're talking about rights. This is the only way anybody ever talks about rights. Rights were given to me by God. Rights were given to me by nature. They come from nature and they're mine and I possess them and they protect me and I defend them. And none of that is true You don't possess them. You don't possess them. You can't defend them, and they don't protect you. They're concepts. They're agreements between people. That's what rights are, and that's why my definition is so important, because it strips away that false sense of security that people get when they think that they have rights that protect them. They don't. It's all you, man. It's just you. It's you in the world, and whoever you can get near you that's trustworthy and that reciprocates rights with you, you get together with people that are trustworthy, and you all protect your stuff yourself. There's no rights out there doing the protecting for you. And layer on top of that, 5 layers deep, you get people that think the Constitution protects them. How well's that worked out? Do they think that they're protected? Yes. So when the next piece of anti-gun legislation passes, like they're trying to push through the House right now to, I think it's red flag laws for the military is the current, gun confiscation du jour of the government. It comes as a total surprise to people. Well, I thought I had the Constitution to protect my rights. No, nothing protects your rights because your rights don't exist. It's just your agreements between people. And there's a giant-ass mafia out there that doesn't give a shit about its constitution and doesn't give a shit about what you think exists called rights that don't. They don't care. And they're going to continue acting as if they don't exist. And you're going to continue being surprised when you get your rights trampled on. Stop thinking that they exist. You're not protected. It's just you. You are out here in the world with you, yourself, and your stuff. And it's on you to figure out how to protect your stuff. It's on you to make good relationships with the people around you so you can build trust and be more safe. That's how you actually get rights. And those concept rights, those mutual reciprocal agreements with people do make you safer. But it's not the rights that make you safer. It's surrounding yourself with good, trustworthy people that reciprocate these concepts called rights, which is really just leaving each other alone. Okay. Hitting play again.
And thereby magically turn a wrongdoing into a right. In other words, everyone possesses exactly the same natural, inherent rights as everyone else. And there are no exceptions to this rule for individuals in government, police, military, or any other societal institution. This is what is meant by equality under natural law.
I feel like I'm getting a bunch of conclusions and very few of the premises that build the argument to those conclusions.
Legality does not equate to morality.
Well, we're not going to disagree here.
Is government authority morally legitimate?
I mean, I think we need laws and regulations, but I'm not sure our laws and regulations are always moral.
Not always.
Yeah, I believe it is.
To some extent.
It depends on whether the authority was, at least in our democratic tradition, whether the authority was based on the consent of the governed.
Ha.
No, No, I feel like we'd be fine without it.
If the laws of man happen to align with the natural laws of morality, then they are, by definition, redundant and therefore unnecessary. If man's law is in opposition with natural law, and therefore false and immoral, it can never be legitimately morally binding upon anyone. Because something is either legal or illegal does not make it moral or immoral. Recognizing this, we can then arrive at the correct understanding that all so-called human authority is morally illegitimate because it is not voluntary and it is based upon coercion and violence.
He has never made the actual case for why actions that he calls harmful are immoral. The fact that an action harms another being is a fact. It's a fact of like reality. That being harmed that being. The moral judgment projected onto that interaction between those beings, calling that moral or immoral, requires justification that I have not yet heard in this video.
Which is itself immoral behavior.
So I'm missing some premises here.
Natural law versus man's law. Does government authority exist in nature?
So authority doesn't exist, it's a concept, so it does not exist in nature.
Yes. Yes. In some cases more than other cases, but yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Today's society, yes.
I feel like you are, whatever your mind convinces itself that it is, or that you are, that's just what it is.
Well, yes, there's always a hierarchy. I mean, even in every animal species, there's a hierarchy.
Yes.
Yes, because we follow orders from our parents from time to time. Yeah, they're the authority figure.
Yes, because of the punishments that can happen if you go against authority.
Yeah, it does.
They do, but it's up to you whether you want to care about it or not.
It does exist in nature. I mean, if you look at animals and birds, there's a hierarchy and there's some form of government, and I'm okay with that.
Public schooling, everybody! Public schooling.
Governmental authority.
That's why public schools exist, right there.
Man-made construct that does not exist in nature. The belief system that certain people can somehow possess legitimate authority over others, or that some people have more or less inherent rights than others, is one of the most fundamental causes of unparalleled suffering and death in our world. Authority is, and always has been, an untrue, illusory, illegitimate, and immoral claim, which is unfortunately accepted and believed in by most human beings with absolute religious fervor. The so-called delegation of authority to politicians, police, and military is inherently morally illegitimate and cannot actually be done in nature, since it is impossible to bestow or delegate a, quote, right to someone else, which no one possesses as an individual.
I like these little tarot card renders.
The human condition is slavery. Is taxation by government morally legitimate?
Yes.
Okay, so
It's
this content is for the
morally
normies, which is good.
Because there are people who are not, yes, I'm just gonna say yes.
Yes, because we need to fund things.
To some extent, but I think it has to be fair taxation.
I think it would depend on what the taxes are going to.
I don't think it's morally legitimate. Again, I do think it is needed to fund resources and things like that, but I don't think it's a moral issue.
I think so, because if we didn't have taxes, we wouldn't be taking care of the greater good, roads, education,
the greater good.
Well, the way we've set up our culture, that's the only thing that makes it work.
Our culture.
Paying taxes?
We.
No. Like, I mean, where does it go? Where does it go? It's like, I mean, we all experience this. You work.
I like
you get a
this
check,
guy.
And then you see a chunk of it missing, and no one's
I
telling
bet
you
I
why
could
it's
wake
missing.
him up.
Hell no. Yeah, no.
Money and taxes, I think there's a lot of bullshit involved, because a lot of money is thrown around, like huge amounts of it, at things like politics and war. and a lot of taxes go into things that aren't really helping most people. They're helping a few people do not so good things.
I agree with Rainbow Bright.
Taxation
Well done.
is theft enforced by the threat of coercion and violence.
Yes.
Are drug laws morally legitimate and necessary? Or do people have the right to put into their body what they choose?
Ooh.
If society is charged with the responsibility of funding the
Society, this is another one, and I know I'm not talking to Mark now, we're talking to the general public. Society doesn't exist. Society can't be charged with anything. It doesn't do anything. Society can't act. It's just a concept representing a bunch of individual people.
health and welfare of everyone in society, then I think there should be laws that prevent people from incurring health risks they would not otherwise occur had they not taken the drugs.
If they promise never to leave the house, but that doesn't happen, so yeah, we have to babysit people, unfortunately.
In my experience, it's kind of like it is their own choice for what they put in their bodies, but at some point you do want the government to step in because you don't want it to become like an entire crisis where you're losing like an entire portion of your country's population due to that drug.
Yeah, so people have the right to put whatever they want to their body, but they also must not let that affect other people around them.
Well, I do not agree with all of the laws, and I think that to a limit that everyone has a choice on that, but I don't think that it should be readily available if it's toxic.
Depends on the drug and how bad it is for you.
I believe they should have the right.
I think people have the right to, I mean, it is our body, we're born into it.
I think they help. They help, but some of them, I would say, are a little over the top, some of them are a little under.
See, what people are describing, and they're using the language of, yeah, I think people have the right. They have that right. Or no, I don't think people have that right. Or they have that right based on these conditions that I'm laying out. You know, if the drug is, you know, below some threshold that I've decided is too bad, if it's below that threshold, then yeah, they have that right. They have that right. They are using my definition, my description of what rights actually are in practice without even realizing it. They're just using possessive language that obfuscates it. What these people are saying is that they would reciprocate rights with people that agreed with them on their subjective threshold of how harmful a drug can be before you lose your sovereign property right over your body. And once you cross that line and start using a drug that is in their subjective interpretation too harmful, they no longer reciprocate the right to not attack you. You might, you know, altruistically continue affording them the respect of not attacking them, but they no longer reciprocate that. They might attack you now because you've crossed this subjective threshold of what they deem is too bad for you. That's how rights actually function. Interactions between people that reciprocate agreements on when they won't attack people. Now, what happens when somebody stops reciprocating rights is that rights, they never existed before, but they cease to operate. And where are you? Where do you find yourself when rights cease operating? You find yourself in reality, where you've always been, where bad things happen, where people hurt other people, where animals eat other animals to survive, where some creatures harm other creatures to get what they want or to make the world around them the way that they want. That is reality. That is reality. That is reality. State of nature is what I call it. So when two humans or two anybody's, two anythings don't reciprocate rights between them, they are in the state of nature. They're in just bare metal reality. People will use force to get what they want, and that is just how it works. And then we as humans, because we have the elevated capacities to think in terms of rights, to understand what rights are, to make reciprocal agreements with each other, to understand what property is, we can find other people that want to reciprocate these things with us, these behaviors with us, and we can elevate ourselves out of the state of nature. And in so doing, we reduce the amount of violence in our lives, and we increase the productivity and security and safety of ourselves and our children and our families. This is elevating ourselves out of the state of nature. And so when somebody like these people, and like most statists out there that want to control you at government gunpoint, when you cross their subjective line about what you're not allowed to do with your property, or in this case with drugs, your body, when you cross their subjective line, they're taking you down to the mat. They're taking you back down to the state of nature, back down to the animal kingdom, where it's now whoever's got the biggest stick wins. That's where they want to live, and they don't know it. And then they obfuscate that by talking in terms of rights that you have and don't have. Well, you don't have that right. That means that we can attack you if we want. That's what that means. That's just obfuscation of leaving the realm of what it means to be human. What it means to be human is to be able to think in these higher orders of understanding about these concepts. That is our superpower as a species, is we can elevate ourselves out of the animal kingdom and choose to not attack our neighbors to get farther in life or to get what we want in the immediate short or long term. We can choose to make decisions that leave us less well off in the short term for the ideal of leading a peaceful life or being what we consider to be a moral person. And when people refuse to do that and stop reciprocating these agreements, they drag you down to the state of nature, back down into the animal kingdom.
Own their body and have a right to choose what they put into it. Are driver's licenses morally legitimate and necessary, or is travel an inherent right?
Driver license is definitely necessary, otherwise there would be way too many accidents.
I think unlicensed travel is a right.
I think you do need a license because that proves that you're able to drive safely.
I think driver's licenses are morally necessary and legitimate.
Morally necessary.
Someone who's going to be driving a car to know how to drive a car. So yes, I would say that driver's licenses are pretty necessary.
You need a license. Have you seen people driving in Philly?
Have you seen people driving? They're texting, they're not paying attention. We got to babysit people, unfortunately.
Driving licenses are necessary because I feel like you shouldn't be able to drive after a certain age.
I think there could be even more rules with driver's licenses, actually. I think they're too lax.
That's another interesting question. I know a few people without licenses who drive, but I don't think it's 100% ethical, or I think there are some drawbacks to that. Mainly the application process.
Licensed drivers is morally legitimate.
Driver's licenses are a coercive restriction on the natural human right to travel. If a government law prohibits an action that doesn't cause harm to anyone else, are people morally obligated to obey that law?
Yes. It brings peace to the society.
I think they should still obey it because it's a law.
It depends on what the purpose of the law was. It might have a purpose other than harm. It might be for a greater good, or it might be, so that's a definite maybe.
No, I don't believe so.
No, I don't think so.
That would be the law, but I don't think that everyone, I think there are occasions or exceptions to that idea, so no.
I think legally they're obligated, but on a personal level, I don't think they are.
No, I don't feel like it. You should, because it's like they make it so that you have to, or else you'll be punished for it. But
this is painful.
Like you should have to. I feel like if it's not hurting anyone,
I don't know if I need to talk to people out on the street. My head might explode.
Man-made laws that are in moral opposition to natural law are morally illegitimate and therefore not morally binding. The only legitimate human interactions are those which are voluntary.
Why? Give me the why. Don't just state the conclusion. Tell me why that's the case. Give me your premises.
They are mutually agreed upon by all of the involved participants. Man-made laws including those which decree and enact behaviors such as prohibition, taxation, and licensure, are not voluntary in any way. They are commands of compliance, which are always backed by the threat of violence or actual violent behavior. Man-made laws are arbitrary decrees of a ruling class calling themselves government, who are believed to possess a magical right to rule. Their subjects, the people living under their so-called jurisdiction, are believed to have a moral obligation to obey this ruling class's arbitrary commands called laws. Understanding that such a system is entirely based in behavior that is coercive, violent, and immoral, and conducted to bring human
You ever point an AR at one of my kids, you will not survive the rest of the day.
Of a dominating ruling class, we can arrive at the unwavering truth that the term government is simply a euphemism for slavery.
Yeah, so this is all for normies. This video is not an exposition on his four philosophers. This is a video for the general public, and some of these conclusions are really good. So I'm not going to have a lot of disagreement with a lot of this stuff. So, and he's doing a good job at least presenting the conclusions.
And coercive means. Slavery can exist in an overt form, in which those being enslaved are physically imprisoned and subject to the confiscation of all their labor. Or slavery can exist in covert form, where mental manipulation is used to legitimize or justify the duress, coercion, and violence that is used to perpetuate the immoral conditions in which people are unjustly kept.
Platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
There is a reason the condition of human slavery continues on and
I gotta hear that again.
Mental manipulation is used to legitimize or justify the duress, coercion, and violence that is used to perpetuate the immoral conditions in which people are unjustly kept.
Platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
There is a reason the condition of human slavery continues on and on. This immoral human condition is maintained by the occult ruling class by manipulating people into a state of ignorance and confusion regarding the actual difference.
Natural law is all about correctly understanding objective morality. Right, correct, based in truth, moral, actions which are in harmony with natural law because they do not initiate harm to other sentient beings. Where is he extracting that definition from reality? That is the whole problem I have with his argument. He is extracting this statement, actions which are in harmony with natural law because they do not initiate harm to other sentient beings. That is a judgment of the actions. That is not detectable in reality. You cannot whip out a morality detector and locate good and evil particles, and the good particles don't float around in associations and actions that do not initiate harm, and evil particles don't float around interactions that do initiate harm. This is something that he's applying. This is the unbacked up premise in the argument.
Between right and wrong. Objective morality. Is morality objective or subjective?
I think morality, to some extent, is human interpretation, but there is a clear right and wrong on other topics.
I think it depends on, definitely depends on who you are, because a different person could see it a completely different way. You get what I'm saying?
I think it depends on the situation.
I believe morality is based on opinion. I mean, I don't really believe that you're necessarily born with a good or bad morale. It's basically based on your life circumstances.
I think it's definitely subjective.
I think it depends on opinion and the situation.
I think it's dependent on human opinion.
I just noticed that the line goes down her chest. Hold on.
I believe morality is based on opinion. I mean, I don't really believe that you're necessarily born with a good or bad morale. It's basically based on your life circumstances.
I think it's definitely subjective.
I think it depends on.
She's got a lot. This is an interesting specimen.
Opinion and the situation.
I think it's dependent on human opinion.
No, I don't believe that there's such thing as objective morality.
I mean, I'm inclined to say that it exists, objective morality, but I don't think that we have the capacity to understand something that all-encompassing.
I think morality is objective.
Objective. I mean, mostly
It's to open up her heart
perception,
chakra.
but I'd say there's like a
Hilarious.
societal viewpoint,
It's a tough question. The way I feel about it is if you're not hurting anyone and if it makes you happy, why not?
Sadly, I think it's subjective.
Yeah, you want to cage people for driving without a permission slip.
Open for agreement or discussion, kind of.
I think it's written in. I think it should be pretty clear. I think it's written in stone, and it's to some point with some opinion, I guess.
I don't think it's written in stone. I think it is subjective, actually. I think it's subjective. Yeah, okay.
I personally think it's more objective than relative.
The difference between right behavior and wrong behavior is objective, meaning it is not based upon the perceptions or opinions of human beings, but rather such a difference in behavior exists in nature, purely independently of subjective human perception or opinion.
This might be what I'm waiting for.
Morality does not change based upon feelings, religion, belief, location, time, or the preferences and whims of man's law.
Now prove it.
These
Where's your
things
evidence?
have no bearing upon true morality. What is moral in one place and time is moral at all places and times.
I would love to see the proof.
In one place or
It would
time
change my
is
life.
immoral everywhere and at any time.
I need the proof, though.
Conscience. The knowledge of this objective difference between right and wrong behavior is called conscience. Conscience is the knowledge of whether any particular behavior in question does or does not initiate harm to another, and therefore whether it is right or wrong. The problem is that most people do not possess this knowledge, or they are extremely confused regarding it. To behave with right action is moral, and to behave with wrong action is immoral. Yet this fundamental understanding is often grossly misunderstood. People do not get to decide what morality is. Morality is based upon whether an action initiates harm or not.
Says you.
This dynamic exists inherently in the natural world.
Okay. Where?
Where do human rights come from?
Yes! Am I gonna get my answer?
Religion, government, society. I guess it depends on the country that's allowing human rights, I'm not sure.
Some from the laws, some from, yeah, I think from the law.
They apparently are decided by many people.
Well, since you're not bored with it, I think it's like a collective, I think they come from your fellow woman or man. More woman, quite frankly.
Constitution.
Realistically, human rights come from law, but I think they should come from the basic moral agreements that I described earlier.
Human rights. I think human rights are inherent.
I want to talk to Rainbow Bright. Somebody find me Rainbow Bright. I want her on my show.
Rights, but then those rights are also, like I said, qualified by society.
Well, human rights come from what you believe that all humans should have in general. So, like, if you believe that they should always have freedom, or if you believe that they are always entitled to something.
They should come from morality.
They come from, I guess, morality, yeah, so.
Well, in the Christian tradition, we say they come from God.
Human rights should come from within and should come from a natural place, but I think in our society they come from governments.
The inherent rights of human beings are their inalienable, universal birthright and can never be granted or removed by any action or process of mankind. Our rights come from nature, meaning they are pre-existing and inherent to creation itself.
Where?
Unfortunately, after thousands of years of human civilization,
how can I detect them?
Most people still do not understand this eternal truth. It seems so simple that we as human beings should willfully choose to take right action, to honor and respect the rights of others not to be harmed, to treat others with the same respect with which we expect to be treated, not to steal the life, well-being, property, rights, or free will of others. Yet it is not as simple as it may seem. True right action is elusive at best and deliberately ignored at worst. And this brings us to the crux of the matter, which is what I refer to as the law of freedom.
Ooh, the law of freedom. This must be an epic law.
The law of freedom.
Give it to me. I want the law.
Of freedom governs the states of freedom or slavery of entire populations of beings who possess the capacity to comprehend the objective difference between moral behavior and immoral behavior. The natural law of freedom dictates that as a society collectively becomes more moral, they collectively become more free. And as a society collectively becomes more immoral, they collectively lose their freedom and become more enslaved. The freedom or slavery of an entire society is hinged upon whether that society behaves in the aggregate morally or immorally. Since most people still...
We're many layers deep into things that I've already pointed to questions and or unsubstantiated claims, so I'm not going to really comment too much on this part. Yeah.
Do not truly know the objective difference between right and wrong behavior. They are constantly making judgments that do not align with natural law. As more and more people act in such an ignorant capacity with respect to natural law, this conduct becomes a fundamental source of disorder and chaos in our society as a whole. In other words, the law of freedom could be summarized like this. As the aggregate moral behavior in any given society increases, the aggregate freedom of the members of that society also increases.
So once you accept his definitions of moral and immoral and freedom and slavery, then this law makes sense. Okay.
And as the aggregate moral behavior of any given society declines, the aggregate freedom of the members of that society also declines. Even more simply put, as morality increases, freedom increases. And as morality declines, freedom declines.
Well, it's kind of a tautology. So, you know, if we define freedom as the absence of coercion over your person and property, and morality is not initiating force against people's persons and property, then as we reduce the amount of coercion on people's persons and property, the amount of coercion on people's persons and property reduces. Yes. We just kind of said the same thing twice.
Therefore, human freedom is entirely dependent upon educated judgments that align with natural law-based morality, the objective knowledge of the difference between right behavior and wrong behavior. Believe it or not, you have just been given the secret of secrets of all secret societies throughout human history.
Liberty After Dark says, well, it sounds much better when you can call it the law of freedom. True. Can't argue with you there, sir.
Moral relativism. Moral relativism is the belief that there is no objective difference between right behavior and wrong behavior. Moral relativists believe that morality is relative or subjective, meaning that right and wrong can change with respect to time and location, depending upon human perception and opinion, likes and dislikes, whims and preferences. Moral relativism is the belief that human beings may arbitrarily decide for themselves what right and wrong are.
Where to even begin with this? Yes. Well, he's arguing that morality exists in reality, and he hasn't proven it. He hasn't shown me how to detect it, or where to find it, or where to extract these moral judgments from reality. And maybe that's just an omission from this video for, I don't know, because it's not meant to be a philosophical treatise, fine, but he hasn't proven it here. And I think it's pretty freaking clear that over time, there is not morality. He's talking about morality as if it's like a monolithic thing. People have certainly held near infinitely different moral rules throughout history. And so it would appear to be directly observable truth that people can hold different moral frameworks inside their head.
And that they may become the arbiters of moral and immoral behavior based upon their likes and dislikes at any given time or place.
Note that, and I equate moral relativity, relativism and subjectivism is the same thing as the state of nature. The state of nature is when the lion's hungry, he decides that his rule for the moment is that when he's hungry, his hunger overrides the life of the rabbit that he eats. And is that rule universalizable? No. Is it objective? No. But that's his personal morality, so to speak. That is relativism. That is subjectivism. Those are just, it's the state of nature with extra steps. It's might makes right with extra steps.
It is absolutely essential for humanity to recognize that morality is objective, and that it is most certainly not based upon human perception or opinion. There is definitely an objective difference in nature between moral behavior and immoral behavior, because moral behavior does not initiate harm to others.
You have to prove that in nature there is some moral judgment that can be extracted or surrounding initiating harm against people. I'm going to keep repeating that because I need it. That's what this video needs. Liberty After Dark says this bugs me because he confuses relativism with subjectivism. Yeah, there's definitely some distinctions missing here. But again, like, this video is for the general public, so we need to not hold it to the philosophical standards that we would have for ourselves.
Whereas immoral behavior does initiate harm. These dynamics exist within and are inherent to the natural world. The prevalence of moral relativism in human society today is one of the main factors which solidifies slavery as the current human condition. Since aligning human behavior with natural law hinges upon knowing the objective difference between right behavior and wrong behavior, if most members of a society accept that there is no truth regarding those objective differences, that society can never consistently behave morally, and therefore they can never truly be free.
So just to clarify, because it is bugging me too, Liberty mentioned that there's a difference between relativism and subjectivism. So relativism would be like if we found out about an Amazonian tribe that had been in the rainforest for years, and it had been their practice for millennia to, once a year to sacrifice a baby and eat it. And a moral relativist would sit over here in America, where obviously that would be shockingly immoral, and they would say, well, that's their culture, that's their morality. Who are we to judge that culture's morality over there by our standards? That would be moral relativism. Subjectivism is just when you include your opinion into your equation of morality. So how you feel about an issue would determine for you whether you consider that to be moral or immoral. Like the people that were like, drugs that are over this line, that cross this line of danger or harm, are immoral, and you can be attacked. That's a subjectivist stance. They're just sort of using their feels to determine what they consider good or evil. Those are different.
True freedom can never exist in a society that embraces moral relativism. A society where people believe there is no objective difference between right and wrong behavior. Knowing the objective difference between right and wrong, and then willfully choosing right action over wrong action, is the foundational basis for the manifestation of the condition of freedom. If human beings remove that foundation by declaring that there is no objective morality, they will never be able to manifest a condition of genuine freedom in their lives. Understanding true
We're seven layers into a word cake right now. We're missing foundation.
Flawed belief in the legitimacy of human authority and government. By doing so, human interaction can become voluntary and free from the immorality of violence and coercion. If we want a world based in real freedom, we must understand that truth is independent of our perception, and that objective morality exists, and we can come to know it. If people learn the true difference between right and wrong behavior, humanity can become and remain free. If human beings continue to refuse this knowledge and continue to accept erroneous beliefs such as authority and moral relativism, humanity is going to remain enslaved. Free will. Do human beings have free will?
We think we do, but I don't believe so.
Human beings, for the most part, have free will.
To some extent. We're not always free to do everything, which I think it should be. I think it should be left like that.
I don't believe so, no.
Yes, in my opinion, I believe that humans have free will. I mean, I don't believe that you're living your life under somebody's control.
Free will. I think we do have free will. We do have free will, but that free will is also suppressed by social norms.
No, actually, no. I don't think human beings have free will.
Yes.
Well, we think we do, but in truth, I don't think we do.
Yes.
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 Yes and no.
Yes, or they should.
In some cases.
Yes.
All human beings have the free will to choose between moral behavior and immoral behavior.
That's a conclusion. Now you have to provide an argument backed up by evidence for me to believe it. So let's see if he does that.
We have a choice as a people. We can use our free will to change our behavior and bring it into alignment with natural law by choosing morally right action.
Okay, the section of this video was, do we have free will? And he just said yes, and then moved on. I need evidence. I need argument and evidence and premises to back up that conclusion. You can't just say yes and move on. Well, I mean, okay. This is for the general public, so I guess
we can choose to
people are dumb enough to go with that.
By condoning and perpetuating a system based in violence, coercion, and moral relativism. Will we continue down the path of slavery, watching our inherent rights stripped from us little by little? Or will we embrace the moral principles of natural law and create a society where each individual's life, rights, and freedom are respected and protected because we recognize our inherent sovereignty and the sovereignty of all other sentient beings? The law of freedom will manifest our reality in either direction based upon our collective moral choices.
I gotta call some of my arguments laws. It makes them sound much more important and real.
The science of natural law. Our shared human experience on Earth is collectively created and determined by the quality of aggregate human behavior. This demonstrates the effects of the natural laws of behavioral consequence operating within the physical realm. Our free will-based behaviors operate in what is known as the plane of causality, because our behavior is the underlying cause of the physical manifestations which result in the world. The consequences and repercussions of aggregate human behavior then materialize upon the plane of effects, which constitutes the shared human condition in which all of us must live. Our aggregate thoughts regarding morality are transformed into the aggregate behavior of our species, and that behavior is then transformed into resultant conditions and consequences. Truly, we collectively reap that which we collectively sow.
There was a lot in there,
action
and I don't think
can
it's worth
never
our
create
time to go
goodness
into
and
it.
harmony. And right action can never constitute a...
It sounded like he was speaking very euphemistically about things that happen between people, like interpersonal behavior and relationships. He was elevating to like the plane of interactions or whatever. I mean, all of that would have to be like individually boiled down to what he actually meant to like reduce the quantity of, I don't know, flowery. I don't want to be, I'm specifically trying not to be disparaging or insulting. So like to reduce the amount of woo language. There was woo language in there, language that doesn't have direct correlations to things that exist. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I'm just trying to describe what I'm talking about. It was very abstract, not, yeah, okay.
Violation of rights. 2 + 2 will never equal 5, and the apple falling from a tree will never fall upwards in elementary terms. Our behavior creates our circumstances. These dynamics can be repeatedly observed, and their workings can be known as a result of such observation. The study of these dynamics in human society constitutes a science of behavioral consequence. All living beings are endowed with self-ownership as an inherent birthright.
From
and
where?
Therefore possess the natural right to
Pixar, it didn't happen.
their own free will to live in sovereignty, free from the initiation of harm or coercion by other human beings. These principles of human freedom and rights are the very basis of morality and are governed by the spiritual laws of behavioral consequence. Any and all violations of these principles are wrongdoings, chaotic actions working in direct opposition to the generative, self-ordering dynamics of natural law as designed by creation itself. Though some may attempt to do so, these laws ultimately cannot be worked around, changed, skirted, or bent to
All right,
suit
I think the
human
video's over.
whims or
We're just kind of
desires.
stating the stuff we
observe the
talked about in the
natural
intro.
rights and sovereignty of other beings is in alignment with spiritual law, and such choice will create the conditions for freedom to manifest upon earth. To choose to conduct wrongdoings in direct violation of these laws will manifest only chaos and suffering. Human behavior is collectively manifested into our physical reality based upon humanity's free will choice whether to act in harmony with natural law, thus creating the conditions of freedom, or to act in opposition to natural law, thus creating the condition of human slavery. These are the universal, moral, spiritual laws of the universe that govern all of humankind. This is the science of natural law.
Okay. Several people throughout this evening stream have recommended that I watch the 8-hour natural law seminar. I have twice, and
the one great work.
It was difficult to dissect that into a response video.
Natural law in
so I was
every conceivable form for the past 13 years.
So the reason why I didn't do this stream as a response to that 8-hour seminar is because that stream would have been 16 hours long minimum. So I was just hoping. I hadn't seen this yet. I was hoping that he had boiled that down into this that would provide me a vehicle to more effectively communicate the issues that I see with his conception of natural law to you guys. That was an attempt. I was hoping that he would have taken that, boiled it down into this hour and 8 minutes that I could then respond to walk you guys through the problems without having to do a 16-hour stream that literally no one's going to watch. I don't know. Maybe I'll do that anyway if you guys want me to. Yeah.
Has gone virtually unnoticed by humanity as a whole, and society continues its rapid descent into immorality, chaos, and slavery. Far too few understand or take heed of my warnings, and even fewer speak out to teach others. I am seeking peers and allies in the war for our very freedom that is before us. Our one great work is to end the human condition of slavery. This arduous task begins with the self and extends to our friends and family, our communities, and our world. Speaking out is an extreme act of defiance because those who are currently in power seek to keep their power by exploiting the ignorance of mankind. There is so much human ignorance in the world today regarding the issue of morality that the situation can seem hopeless. Becoming aware of the level of ignorance that exists, we must also come to see that the only solution to the human condition of slavery is to spread the understanding of natural law and make it common sense knowledge for everyone. The dark occultists who are currently controlling humanity seek to continue to hide this understanding.
Okay,
and to prevent
we're kind of
it from
repeating
becoming
ourselves at this point. I don't want
everyday
to...
common sense knowledge on a worldwide scale. Ultimately, this documentary is a call to action for all those who have gained an understanding of natural law and its principles.
I wish I had gained an understanding.
A lot more teachers are needed to carry this message of freedom to the masses of humanity. There are not yet enough voices doing this. You yourself need to get involved in the effort of spreading the knowledge of natural law.
Okay.
The solution lies in law. What on earth is happening?
And I'll leave it there on that screen so that you guys, I want to make sure that if you guys are interested in his work, you can go and purchase and download. Excuse me, you can't download. You can purchase this on DVD or thumb drive at whatonearthishappening.com. I just checked it, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem like I can get the soundtrack, which is what I really wanted from this. So I might have to tweet him and ask him if I can somehow get the music behind this. I really enjoyed it. It did have like a War Games vibe. Remember that movie War Games? Oh, it was really good. It's like, anyway, really liked the soundtrack. Okay, so again, to summarize, I'm happy that there's somebody out there doing work in this area. Good on him. I am impressed that he completed a project of this quality. This was an impressive production. Certainly not something that I've been able to achieve thus far, and hope to one day. So good on him for that. Really, really cool. I unfortunately didn't find the answers that I was looking for to the same questions that I had found when I watched his longer 8-hour seminar on natural law, specifically on where these moral judgments appear and can be detectable in reality. That's what's missing here. His conclusions I agree with. I think he gets to those conclusions using invalid reasoning, faulty logic. So we can quibble about that, we can disagree on that, but his conclusions are the right ones. I think he got there for the wrong reasons. So, we can be friends, we can be allies, we're going to reciprocate rights with each other. So there's no conflict there. That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, I'm admiring him for doing the work, because not many people do in the world. They don't do the work of reasoning through the philosophy behind what they believe, and he has. So good on him. Hopefully I've illustrated to you guys what I think is missing here. There is no morality particle that we can detect to extract moral judgments from the fabric of reality in an objective way. That does not exist. Can we have objective morality in the sense that it can be extracted from the fabric of reality? No. Doesn't exist. Excuse me. I should use the same language I used when I talk about religion. I have seen insufficient evidence thus far to convince me that it exists. It might exist. It might be the source of our conscience, the common conscience that most people share. Certainly there's exceptions which would need justifications. There's certainly problems for the scientific theory that our conscience is our morality particle detector, because there's certainly conflicting consciences, and conscience certainly changes over time and changes between culture and location. They used to burn witches and feel great about it, for one example. So I won't say that it doesn't exist and that he's wrong, and I also won't say that God doesn't exist. I'll say I've seen insufficient evidence. I'm looking for a way to believe that it's true, but I have not yet seen enough evidence to believe that it's true. I'm open to see it. I'd love to see it. If somebody could show it to me, I would love to change my mind. I would love to see I came from a place of assuming that objective morality was a thing and that our rights did flow from something in an objective way. That's where I began my philosophical journey 10, 15 years ago. But I've never seen evidence of it. So I'm saying that if I have a bias, my bias is towards hopefully one day discovering evidence of objective morality in nature, in the fabric of reality. Haven't seen it. You have to present evidence for that. I have seen insufficient evidence of that. And so I am held in my current position by the force of reason, by the lack of observable evidence of such a thing. Does that leave us completely floundering in the wind as moral subjectivists, relativists? Hell no. Hell no. We have vast capacities for cooperation and reciprocating agreements with one another. Grab it. You're spamming the chat with a bunch of nouns. If you disagree with me, if you have evidence of this stuff, this goes for any of you. If any of you have evidence of any of this, and you can prove me wrong, you're welcome on the show. Right now, if you want. If you want, hit me up on Discord or whatever. But please make sure you have evidence, because I don't want to, make everybody wait and then not. So make sure you're ready. But yeah, so I think, back to my point, I think if you check out my stub article, it's not finished, disenthralled.me/rights, you can see me talk about the 3 different ways the word objective is used. You can see that the traditional way that most people think when somebody says objective morality is pretty much absolutely disprovable, or at least completely lacking in evidence. And the way that I use objective morality is to mean non-subjective morality. Like, we can choose to use an equation for judging human interaction that is not in any way subjective and that functions in all times and places. And that is the equation that we should be seeking. And, for the first time in the history of the species, we have potentially an equation. We have a theory of an equation that should function universally in all times and places between all people. And it should be objective in that it doesn't contain feels and emotions and personal opinions. It should function deterministically. If you plug in the variables the same way, you get the same answer. We have that. We don't need God kings. We don't need churches. We don't need clerics and witch doctors anymore. We don't need constitutions and governments anymore. We have an equation that should be, if we can adopt it, then we have a non-subjective morality, which is the closest thing that I can find to an objective morality that will reduce harm to everyone involved. So let me catch up on comments and then we'll probably wrap this up. Thank you guys for hanging out. I know it went a little bit longer than I expected. Mark Passios is a huge hard worker and is seeking to achieve human peace. I do admire his passion as well. Yes. Outlaw says it exists. You just haven't took 10 grams of mushrooms on an empty stomach yet. Hallucinations will not convince me. And, I can't be sure of my senses. I can only be less sure of my senses when I'm on hallucinogens, not more sure, right? I mean, make an argument to the contrary if you disagree with me. Fur, hair, and feathers is evidence of objective morality? Says Grab It Hard. That's evidence, buddy. Create it or else tell me where it came from. I don't know. Maybe you're talking to somebody else in chat. I don't know that that applies to me. So sorry if I misunderstood. You probably weren't talking to me. Okay. Okay. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed the stream. I have enjoyed watching this video and talking through it. I'm happy to talk to Mark. I'm happy to have him on this show, or I don't know. Anarchast is, has a wider audience, but I don't know if it's as interested in philosophy as this audience that we have here between us is. So it might belong here more to have that discussion, but I don't really care where it happens. I'm happy to chat with him. And if he doesn't have time to chat, then I'm also happy to do a 16-hour stream and go through the 8-hour seminar. If you guys would actually watch something like that, which I can't imagine you would. All right, I'm going to be on Discord after the stream for a little while. If anybody wants to continue the discussion, you can get a link to join our Discord server at disenthrall.me/discord. And we also have a Matrix server, which is where the adult conversations happen. And I don't mean pornography. I mean the wrong think and the words that you can't say on YouTube and Discord happen. You can find information on joining that at disenthrall.me/matrix. And yeah, if you want to support the show, if you appreciate this conversation, this attempt to refine our understanding of the philosophy of liberty, please consider becoming a supporter of the show, disenthrall.me/support. All right. Thanks, everybody.